At my stepdaughter Chloe's lavish birthday, a gift I poured weeks into, hiding a deep secret, was called cheap and donation pile material. My stepson mocked my finances, all in the home I helped them buy. I just left. But when their wedding plans landed, demanding my Cape Cod house and trashing my life, something hardened. This is my story. Like, share, and tell me where you're listening from. I had spent 3 weeks on Chloe's birthday gift. Not just 3 weeks, but 3 weeks of focused, loving effort. Every stitch, a silent message of hope and remembrance. I had knitted a set of soft, colorful dolls. Each one was unique, with its own little personality, stitched together with the kind of care you give to something truly precious. Inside one of them, nestled deep within the stuffing, was Arthur's diamond. My husband Arthur, Chloe's father, had given it to me years ago. It was a flawless stone, a symbol of everything we had built, everything we had planned before he was taken from us too soon. I imagined Chloe finding it, understanding the subtle, heartfelt legacy it represented. I thought she would understand the meaning behind it. A secret whisper of our past. A connection to her father. Something beautiful hidden within. Something simple and handmade. When I arrived at Chloe's Beacon Hill townhouse, a home I had helped finance with a significant portion of my inheritance from Arthur, I was stopped at the gate. A security guard, built like a brick wall, demanded my name and searched my bag. My own stepdaughter's house, and I was being treated like a stranger, a potential threat. It was a cold start to what I had hoped would be a warm family gathering. Inside, the house hummed with the superficial elegance Chloe loved. Everything was sleek, modern, almost clinically perfect. There was no warmth, no hint of the cozy family feeling I always tried to cultivate. Edward, my stepson, was the first one I saw. He barely glanced up from his phone. "Oh, hey Maggie," he mumbled, his eyes still glued to the screen. Not a hug, not even a real smile, just a casual dismissal that set the tone for the entire evening. It felt like walking into a stranger's house, not the home of family I had supported and loved for years. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and an unspoken distance. Then Vicky, my sister-in-law, swept in, her voice bright and a little too loud. "Time for presents," she declared, clapping her hands. She turned to Chloe. "Darling, why don't you start with the smaller gifts first? We can save the big ones for later." It was a subtle but clear instruction, implying that my carefully wrapped package probably fell into the small and therefore less significant category. I watched as Chloe, her perfectly manicured fingers gleaming, reached for my gift. Her fiancé, Julian, stood beside her, his expression one of detached amusement, a slight smirk playing on his lips as he surveyed the scene. He looked like a spectator at a show, not an engaged participant in a family celebration. Chloe tore the paper off, her movements quick and almost careless. She pulled out one of the knitted dolls, holding it at arm's length. Her nose wrinkled slightly. "Oh," she said, her voice dripping with thinly veiled disdain. "This looks so cheap." She paused, then added, "It looks like something you'd find at a flea market, Maggie." She held it even further away from her designer dress, as if the yarn might somehow contaminate her. The vibrant colors I had chosen, meant to bring joy, suddenly seemed childish, out of place in her pristine world. Julian snickered beside her. "Perfect for the donation pile," he chimed in, his words laced with a cruel sarcasm that cut deep. He winked at a few of his friends standing nearby, and a ripple of laughter spread through the room. It was a wave of cold, mocking sound that washed over me, leaving me feeling exposed and humiliated. My cheeks burned with a heat that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. Edward, finally tearing his gaze from his phone, looked at me with a condescending pity. "Maggie," he said, shaking his head. "Maybe you need some help with your finances. Or perhaps you just have too much time on your hands these days." His words were a direct hit, implying I was wasting money or that my life was so empty I had to resort to childish crafts. He knew exactly how much I had given to them, how I had helped them with this very house, yet he spoke as if I were a charity case. In that moment, I felt a flicker of something close to despair, But then, across the crowded room, my eyes met Danny's. He was Arthur's nephew, Chloe and Edward's cousin. His gaze held a quiet apology, a silent acknowledgement of the cruelty in the air. It was a small kindness, a brief moment of connection, and it was almost enough to break me. I had to force myself to keep my composure. I swallowed hard, focusing on his eyes, letting his silent empathy be the anchor that kept me from falling apart completely. I made my excuses quickly, mumbling something about a headache, and left early. The laughter of Chloe and her friends echoed behind me as I walked out, each peal a fresh sting. The cool night air did little to calm the fire in my cheeks or the tremor in my hands. I drove home in a daze, the weight of their disregard heavy on my chest. When I finally reached my own quiet house, I found an email from Chloe waiting for me. The subject line was wedding plans, and attached were several documents. Wedding contracts. I opened the email, my hands still trembling slightly from the evening's humiliation. Chloe's message was short, direct, and utterly devoid of warmth. She announced that the Cape Cod beach house, Arthur's beloved property, the place where we had spent our happiest summers, would be the venue for her wedding. "We're going to do some major renovations," she wrote, "to really update the place." And then, the final blow, delivered with casual cruelty. "We'll be removing all of your old furniture, of course, to make room for the new design." My hands, which had just moments ago trembled with humiliation, now clenched into fists. Arthur's house. My home. My memories. My furniture, which held stories and a lifetime of love, dismissed as old and slated for removal. It was not just an insult, it was an eviction notice from my own past, a declaration that my life, my taste, my very presence, was an inconvenience to be swept away. Something shifted inside me then. A softness that had always been there. A tendency to forgive, to understand, to give the benefit of the doubt, began to harden. It wasn't a sudden snap, but a slow, deliberate crystallizing. The tears that had threatened to fall earlier were gone, replaced by a cold resolve. The diamond, hidden in the doll, seemed to shimmer in my mind's eye, a beacon of forgotten value. They wanted to throw away what was precious to me, to erase my mark. They had no idea what they had just awakened. The morning after Chloe's birthday, I woke up to a text from Edward. It was a link, complete with glossy photos and glowing testimonials, to a place called Pine Ridge Senior Living. He called it a wonderful retirement community, full of amenities, designed for people like you, Mom, who deserve to relax. I stared at the words, the casual assumption that my life was over, that my rightful place was in a gilded cage. Without a second thought, I silently deleted the message. The hardening within me continued, a quiet resolve forming beneath the surface. I felt a sudden, desperate need to see the Cape Cod beach house, Arthur's house, my house, before they could lay their destructive hands on it. I threw a few things into a bag and drove straight there, the familiar coastal route a blur. The drive was usually a balm for my soul, a journey back to cherished memories. Today, it felt like a race against time. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw a scene that made my blood run cold. Vicky, Chloe, and a designer I didn't recognize were standing inside, pointing at a wall. I heard words like demolition and open concept. Chloe was holding a tablet, swiping through images of sterile, minimalist interiors. The designer, a young man with a precise haircut, was nodding enthusiastically. "This load-bearing wall needs to go," he said, tapping the tablet. "It opens up the entire space. We're aiming for a real Hamptons chic vibe." Then I heard Vicky's voice. A little too loud, a little too confident. "And don't worry about Maggie," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "She's barely here anymore. She won't mind." My feet carried me through the open door, a storm brewing inside me. "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through their planning, "I do mind." They all turned, startled, their faces a mixture of surprise and annoyance. "And who, exactly," I continued, my voice steadier than I felt, "approved these structural changes? This is my house." Chloe, ever quick with a lie, puffed up her chest. "Mom, we talked about this at Christmas," she said, her tone falsely sweet. "You agreed to modernizing the place. We never said demolition, just updates to bring it into the 21st century. Her eyes darted to Vicky, who gave a subtle nod of approval. The lie was so smooth, so practiced, there had been no such conversation, no such agreement. It was all a fabrication, built on the assumption that I was too old, too insignificant, to question them. My gaze swept the room, looking for something familiar, something that anchored me to this place. My eyes landed on the mantelpiece. Arthur's photograph, a framed picture of him smiling broadly, his arm around me, was gone. In its place was a sleek mood board, plastered with images of white furniture, abstract art, and minimalist decor. Hampton's chic, as the designer had so enthusiastically declared. It was an aesthetic that completely erased Arthur's presence, erased my presence. "Where is Arthur's picture?" I asked, my voice tight. Vicky fluttered her hands. "Oh, those personal items," she said vaguely. "They've all been carefully packed away for safekeeping, dear. We didn't want anything to get damaged during the renovations." Her emphasis on the word renovations was a subtle jab, a reminder of Chloe's lie, but I knew what safekeeping truly meant in their world. Out of sight, out of mind, probably destined for the trash. That night, alone in the house that felt less and less like home, I went searching. I found 3 dusty cardboard boxes in the garage, tucked away behind some old gardening tools. Each was labeled, in Vicky's neat handwriting, Eleanor's things. Eleanor was Arthur's first wife, Chloe and Edward's mother. The boxes were filled with Arthur's fishing trophies, his old worn books, my knitted dolls from Chloe's birthday, still in their crumpled wrapping paper, tossed in without care. They had mixed my belongings, my gifts, with those of Arthur's first wife, as if to say, "You're all the same. Old, unwanted, irrelevant." The diamond, I realized with a jolt, was still hidden inside one of those neglected dolls. It was a stark visual representation of how they viewed my life, my love, my contributions. Insignificant, easily discarded, buried under the weight of their own self-importance. Just as I was about to close the box, my phone rang. It was Edward again. His voice, usually gruff, was now smooth, almost unctuous. "Mom, I've been thinking about your future," he began, launching into another spiel about the retirement community. He then pivoted, without missing a beat, and for the beach house, it would be much simpler, much less stress for you, if we transferred it into a family trust. For everyone's benefit, you understand. I recognized that tone. It was the same smooth, rehearsed delivery he used in court when trying to sway a jury. He was pitching me, trying to sell me on a future he had already decided for me. A future that systematically removed me from my assets, from my autonomy. He was already planning my financial obsolescence. I hung up abruptly, without a word. My heart pounded, a frantic rhythm against my ribs. As I stood there, still in the garage, I noticed something on the small, dusty workbench. A brochure, "Seaside Retirement Living," it proclaimed in cheerful, optimistic script. Tucked inside was a small, handwritten note from Vicky. Perfect for Mom. It wasn't just a suggestion anymore. It was a plan, a strategy. They weren't just thinking about my future. They were actively designing it. Dismantling my life piece by piece. The beach house, my home, my independence, my very identity. They were systematically carving it all up, deciding what belonged to whom, what was worth keeping, and what was to be discarded. A cold clarity washed over me. They were already dividing my life into pieces, and I had been letting them. The next day, still reeling from the discovery, I went to my doctor for my regular checkup. Dr. Miller looked at my charts with concern. "Maggie," he said, his brow furrowed, "your blood pressure is significantly elevated. This isn't like you." He paused, tapping his pen on the file. "Are you under any unusual stress? We need to be careful. At your age, elevated blood pressure can lead to serious cardiac events." His words were a stark reminder that this wasn't just about property or pride, it was about my well-being, my very life. The fight wasn't just for my things, It was for myself. I met Brenda, my oldest and dearest friend, for lunch a few days later. We chose a quiet little cafe, the kind where you could actually hear each other speak. Over bowls of soup and warm bread, I laid out everything that had happened over the past month. I recounted Chloe's birthday humiliation, the cheap doll, Julian's cruel joke, Edward's condescension. I described the scene at the beach house, the demolition plans, the missing photograph, the Eleanor's things, boxes in the garage, and the retirement community brochure. As I spoke, the words tumbled out, each one carrying the weight of the disrespect and betrayal I had felt. Brenda listened intently, her expression shifting from concern to outrage. "And the diamond?" she asked, her voice low. "The one Arthur gave you? Is it still inside the doll?" "Yes," I confirmed. "Still inside. Untouched, apparently. Tucked away in a box with all the other unwanted items." Brenda leaned forward, her eyes serious. "Maggie," she said, her voice firm, "this isn't just disrespect. This isn't just them being thoughtless. They are systematically maneuvering to control your assets. Your house, your money, your future. They're trying to cut you out." Her words hit me hard. But they resonated with a truth I had been trying to deny. "Edward wants me to transfer the beach house into a family trust," I explained, my voice barely above a whisper. Brenda scoffed. "If Edward controls that family trust," she warned, "you'll be receiving an allowance from your own money. An allowance, Maggie. From your own life savings, your own inheritance. You'll have to ask permission to spend your own money." A chill ran down my spine. "He's asked for power of attorney 3 times since Christmas," I admitted. "Each time I've been putting him off, saying I needed more time to think about it." "And what exactly are you getting in return for all this, Maggie?" Brenda asked, her question sharp, direct, cutting through my denial. Her words struck me like a physical blow. What was I getting in return? Nothing but disrespect, humiliation, and a systematic attempt to erase my identity and claim my assets. I searched for an answer, any answer, but my mind was blank. "They're my family," I mumbled weakly, the old loyalty still trying to assert itself, even as it crumbled. Brenda fixed me with a stare. "No," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "No, they're not acting like family, Maggie. They're acting like people taking advantage of your gentle nature, your generosity. They're taking advantage of the fact that you love them, and you want to believe the best in them." Her words, though painful, were a stark reality check. The soft, gentle part of me that always wanted to see the good in people, especially family, was finally being chipped away. On my way home from lunch, Brenda's words echoing in my ears, I made an unexpected detour. I drove to the bank, a branch far from my usual one that my family didn't know about. There, I accessed a safe deposit box I had opened years ago, on Arthur's insistence. As a backup. Just in case. Inside, among old family documents and birth certificates, was Arthur's coin collection, a valuable assortment of rare coins he had meticulously built over decades. He had always said it was for a rainy day, a last resort, a hidden asset. It was a small but significant detail that Brenda's clear-eyed assessment had reminded me to check. It was a tangible piece of my past, a secret asset they knew nothing about. Later that evening, as I was trying to process everything, my phone rang. It was Danny, Arthur's nephew. His voice was hesitant, laced with concern. "Aunt Maggie," he began. "I just wanted to call and check in. Are they really planning major renovations at the Cape Cod house without even asking you?" His genuine worry was a stark contrast to Chloe and Edward's calculated indifference. Danny paused, then lowered his voice. "I was helping him with some paperwork, and I saw them. Investment losses. Second mortgage notices. There's a lot of debt, Aunt Maggie." My heart gave a lurch. "What are you saying, Danny?" "I think," he said slowly, "they may be counting on your assets to bail them out. They're in deeper trouble than they let on." His words confirmed Brenda's suspicions, adding another layer to the deception. This wasn't just about disrespect or a desire for a lavish wedding. It was about financial desperation. thinly veiled as familial concern. As soon as I hung up with Danny, I went to my computer and checked my online banking. My breath hitched in my throat. In the past week, there had been 3 attempted logins from an unrecognized device. Someone was trying to access my accounts. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't just about a lavish wedding or a desire to modernize. This was about desperation and opportunism disguised as family concern. They weren't just neglecting me. They were actively trying to strip me of my resources, to control my life, to use me. Haunted by Chloe's disdainful look so cheap and Julian's cruel donation pile remark, I finally understood. The small, kind gestures I had always looked for, the redeeming qualities I had always hoped they possessed, simply weren't there. It was time I stopped looking deeper for redeeming qualities in them as well. My soft heart was officially hardening. The game had changed. The very next morning, I didn't hesitate. I picked up the phone and called Mr. Sterling. An estate attorney Arthur had introduced me to years ago. Arthur had always been meticulous about planning, about ensuring I would be protected, even after he was gone. Mr. Sterling was a sharp, seasoned lawyer, known for his discretion and his ability to see through deception. I knew he was the right person to call. We met at a quiet cafe, the same one where I had just spoken with Brenda. Mr. Sterling listened patiently as I recounted everything, from the humiliation at Chloe's birthday to the attempted logins on my bank accounts and Danny's warnings about Edward's financial troubles. He didn't interrupt, his expression unreadable, but I could tell he was taking it all in. When I finished, he took a sip of his coffee. Arthur, he began, his voice calm, would be deeply troubled by what's happening. He built his legacy on principle, not manipulation. He then confirmed what Danny had hinted at. I've done some preliminary checks on Edward. His financial losses are substantial, far more than he'd ever admit to publicly. Mr. Sterling paused, his gaze meeting mine directly. From what you've told me, it seems Edward is underwater financially, and he sees you, Maggie, as the life raft. The bluntness of his statement was sobering. It wasn't about love or family loyalty anymore. It was about survival for them. At my expense. My primary advice, Mr. Sterling continued, is to protect yourself. Immediately. He leaned forward. Who has access to your bank accounts? Your credit cards? Your properties? I quickly reassured him. Only I have access to my primary bank accounts now. I've already tightened security, and both the Boston Brownstone and the Cape Cod Beach House are in my name alone. Arthur insisted on that, much to Edward and Chloe's annoyance. Even back then, Arthur, in his wisdom, had foreseen this kind of struggle. Though he never spoke of it directly, he had simply ensured I would be secure. Good, Mr. Sterling nodded. That gives us a strong position. He then addressed Chloe's demand for the beach house as a wedding venue. Regarding the wedding at the beach house, Maggie, you have legal options. You are well within your rights to refuse to host it. It is your property. After all, I considered this. Refusing to host the wedding would cause a significant conflict, an open declaration of war. It was tempting, but I knew it would just escalate the drama, turn me into the villain in their narrative. What about more definitive options? I asked, testing the waters. Mr. Sterling's eyes glinted. There are always more definitive options, he said, a faint smile touching his lips. Options that send a clear, unequivocal message, beyond merely saying, no. The word definitive resonated deeply within me. It was what I craved. A final, undeniable statement. I'm listening, I said, my voice firm, feeling a surge of resolve. Back home, I immediately implemented additional security measures for all my bank accounts, changing passwords, setting up two-factor authentication on everything. I also placed alerts on all transactions, ensuring I would be notified of any suspicious activity. The attempts to access my accounts had shaken me, but they had also ignited a fierce need for control. Later that afternoon, a message popped up on my phone from Chloe. Mom, just need your final approval for the wedding flowers. The arrangements are gorgeous, and they'll really make the venue pop. It's an $18,000 expense, but so worth it. I've already told the florist you'll be covering it. My blood ran cold. $18,000. Not an ask, but an expectation. A casual announcement of an exorbitant expense they simply assumed I would cover. It was a stark reminder of their entitlement. As if on cue, another retirement community brochure appeared on my kitchen table, left there by Vicky, no doubt. This one was titled Sunny Meadows Senior Living, and beneath it, in Vicky's familiar script, was a note. More affordable option. The message was clear. My time and my money were running out, and I needed to be neatly packed away somewhere convenient and cheap. Just as I was about to call Mr. Sterling, my phone rang. It was Danny again, his voice urgent. Aunt Maggie. I just overheard Edward on the phone. He's having dinner tonight with your financial advisor. He's talking about consolidating your investments. My heart hammered against my ribs. Consolidating my investments, which to Edward likely meant seizing control, siphoning off funds to cover his own substantial losses. This was it, the final straw. They were making their move, and they were doing it fast. Without a moment's hesitation, I called Mr. Sterling. He answered on the first ring. Mr. Sterling, I said, my voice steady, filled with a newfound conviction. I've made my decision. Edward is meeting with my financial advisor tonight to consolidate my investments. I'd like to explore that definitive option we discussed. There was a brief pause on the other end, then Mr. Sterling's voice, calm and resolute. Excellent, Maggie. We'll proceed immediately. Consider it done. I hung up the phone, a strange mix of relief and steely determination washing over me. I walked to the window, gazing out at the familiar Boston skyline. The city lights glittered below, a vast network of lives and ambitions. For too long, I had allowed myself to be pushed around, to be a passive observer in my own life, to be a victim of my family's greed. But no more. I affirmed to myself, it's time I stopped being a passenger in my own life. Tonight, the game changed. And for the first time in weeks, I slept deeply. A sleep of quiet resolution, undisturbed by the echoes of their laughter or their casual cruelty. The very next day, I called Sarah Jenkins. She was known as Boston's most discreet property agent, specializing in high-end, private sales. Arthur had mentioned her once, saying she was the only one he'd trust with a sensitive transaction. I explained my situation, emphasizing my desire to sell the Cape Cod property quickly and, most importantly, privately. Sarah listened without judgment, her voice calm and professional. Given the market and the desirability of a property like yours on Cape Cod, she explained, a private sale could expedite things considerably. We might even be looking at a 45-day close, maybe less, if we find the right buyer who values discretion. Her words offered a glimmer of hope, a concrete path forward. After our meeting, I drove straight to the beach house. The familiar scent of salt and sea air usually brought me comfort, but today it was mixed with a sense of urgency and impending change. I walked through the rooms, memories flooding back, Arthur teaching Chloe to play chess in the living room, Edward proudly showing off a fish he'd caught, laughter echoing from the porch. These were my memories, our family's true history, not the sterile vision Chloe and Vicky had for it. In what they had so casually designated as my future bridal suite, I found fabric swatches laid out on a table, paint samples taped to the walls, and a detailed floor plan. The plan clearly marked the room as the bridal suite, my bedroom, my sanctuary, now completely appropriated for Chloe's grand event. It was a final, undeniable confirmation of their blatant disregard. My phone buzzed. It was Edward. Mom, the text read, Vicky and I are having an important financial strategy dinner with your advisor tonight. We'd love for you to join us. Critical discussion about your future. I didn't respond. The audacity of it, planning my future without my consent, while simultaneously trying to strip me of my assets. They would be in for a rude awakening. As soon as I left the beach house, I called Sarah Jenkins. I've made my decision, I told her. My voice firm. I'd like to proceed with listing the property immediately, exactly as we discussed. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was Sarah. Maggie, she said, her voice barely containing her excitement. I have an offer for you. Full asking price. All cash. With a 40-day close. The buyer is a tech entrepreneur from the West Coast, relocating to the East. He values privacy. Just like you. I accept, I said, without hesitation. It was a clean break, a swift resolution. I immediately arranged for professional photographers to capture the house as it was, before the new owners moved in, before any of their renovations could begin. I wanted to remember it as Arthur and I had built it, as a home, not a backdrop for someone else's ego. I spent the rest of the evening at the beach house, meticulously removing all my personal items. Photo albums filled with generations of memories, Arthur's favorite books, their pages worn smooth from countless readings, even a small, lacquered box containing a portion of Arthur's ashes, which I had kept hidden in his study. Every item I carefully packed was a piece of my history, a fragment of a life they thought they could simply erase. The next morning, as I was loading the last box into my car, a sleek black SUV pulled into the driveway. Out stepped Chloe's wedding planner, a young woman with a clipboard and a look of bustling efficiency. She looked startled to find me there. "Mrs. Harrison?" she asked, her eyes widening. I looked at her calmly, a strange sense of power washing over me. "I'm afraid," I said, my voice steady. "The wedding plans have changed. This house is no longer available as a venue." Her jaw dropped. She stammered something, but I simply nodded politely, got into my car, and drove away, leaving her standing bewildered in the driveway. As I drove home, a strange lightness settled in my chest. It wasn't triumph, not yet, but a deep satisfaction that came from taking decisive action, from reclaiming control of my own life. That evening, I had dinner with Danny. He had been a steady, kind presence throughout this ordeal, and I felt I owed him the truth. "Danny," I began, "I've sold the beach house." His fork clattered against his plate. "Before the wedding?" he asked, his eyes wide. He quickly added, "Aunt Maggie? They're going to lose their minds." I knew they would. I was prepared for it. "Let them," I said, a new strength in my voice. "It's not my responsibility to manage their emotions." I looked at him, feeling a surge of affection for his honest concern. "This sale," I explained. "It's not just about the house. It's because of what that moment revealed about how they see me, how little they value me, how eager they are to discard me, and everything that matters to me." Danny stared at me for a long moment, then a slow smile spread across his face. "You know, Aunt Maggie," he said softly, "I think I respect you more right now than I ever have." His words brought a prickle of tears to my eyes, but they were tears of gratitude, not sadness. His respect meant more than any empty praise from Chloe or Edward. Later that night, I electronically signed the purchase offer. The closing date was set for exactly 1 week before Chloe's wedding day. The timing was perfect, a final, undeniable statement. I knew the storm was coming, the calls, the accusations, the outrage. But for the first time in a long time, I was ready to weather it. At precisely 11:23 p.m., my phone exploded. It wasn't a gentle buzz. It was a furious, relentless assault of calls and texts. Back and forth, flashing across my screen like angry fireworks. "Call me now! What are you doing? This is insane!" The rapid-fire messages confirmed it. They had discovered my plans. The storm had officially arrived. I simply placed my phone face down on my nightstand and allowed myself the luxury of a peaceful night's sleep. The next morning, the doorbell rang with an aggressive, insistent rhythm. I knew who it was. I opened the door to find Edward, his face red, his eyes blazing with fury. "What the hell are you doing?" he practically bellowed, not bothering with a greeting. "Selling the beach house? Are you out of your mind?" I calmly stepped back, gesturing him inside. "Come in, Edward," I said, my voice even. "Would you like some coffee?" My composure seemed to throw him off balance for a moment. He just stared at me, dumbfounded. "As for what I'm doing," I continued, I'm simplifying my life by selling our family beach house. It's a natural progression. He regained his anger almost instantly. You can't do this. We've sent out invitations. We've made non-refundable deposits. Chloe's entire wedding is planned around that house. My beach house. I corrected him gently, but firmly. His anger shifted, twisting into something more manipulative. This is about the birthday party, isn't it? He accused, trying to find a convenient, emotional reason for my actions. Chloe's comment about your gift. She was just joking, Mom. You know how she is. I met his gaze, refusing to let him deflect. This isn't about one comment, Edward. Nor is it about a single birthday party. This is about a pattern of behavior, yours included. The retirement community brochures, the attempts to get power of attorney, the financial strategy meetings with my advisor without my consent, and, I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in, the unauthorized attempts to access my accounts. Edward's furious façade cracked. His face went pale, and the anger drained from his eyes, replaced by a desperate fear. He looked like a cornered animal. Mom, please, he pleaded, his voice suddenly hoarse. I'm in trouble. Serious trouble. The Westridge development. It failed. Badly. I'm underwater. The truth, raw and ugly, was finally laid bare. So, I said, my voice flat, this isn't about concern for my welfare. It's about money. It's about bailing you out. He nodded, avoiding my eyes. I owe a substantial amount, Mom. Investors are breathing down my neck. I thought if I could just get access to your assets, I could turn it around. I promise I would have paid you back. The desperation in his voice was real, but it was a desperation born of his own recklessness, not of genuine care for me. The proceeds from the sale of the beach house, I stated, my voice devoid of emotion, will go directly into accounts you don't have access to. Accounts that are fully secured. His head snapped up, a flicker of his old anger returning. You would do this to your own family? He demanded, as if I were the betrayer. You've left me no choice, Edward, I replied, my voice unwavering. You've shown me exactly how much respect you have for my autonomy, for my property, for my wishes. You tried to steal my life, Edward, piece by piece. That afternoon, Chloe arrived, equally distraught, though her distress was more performative. Her eyes were red, her mascara smudged. Mom, how could you? She wailed, collapsing onto my sofa dramatically. Julian is freaking out. His parents are already asking questions. Do you have any idea how this makes us look? About as bad, I replied, my voice calm, as I looked when you mocked my gift in front of everyone at your party. The gift I spent weeks knitting for you, with something very precious hidden inside. Chloe gaped at me, stunned by my directness. She muttered something about me being unreasonable and ruining everything, then stormed out, slamming the door behind her. As she left, I felt no satisfaction, no triumph, only a quiet certainty that I was finally standing in my own truth, no longer allowing myself to be their doormat. Unexpectedly, later that evening, Julian, Chloe's fiancé, came to my door. He looked uncomfortable, his usual smirk replaced by a hesitant expression. Mrs. Harrison, he began. I wanted to apologize. About the birthday party. My comment. It was out of line. He paused, then continued. And the way everyone's reacting to this whole situation. It's shown me a side of this family I hadn't noticed before. He seemed genuinely unsettled by their behavior, his detachment finally giving way to a glimmer of insight. It was a small concession, but it was enough to make me see that not everyone was completely lost. Julian's unexpected visit, and his quiet apology, solidified my resolve. I called Sarah Jenkins again. Can we accelerate the closing date even further? I asked. To 10 days from now? Sarah, ever efficient, made some calls. By the end of the day, she had secured an even earlier closing date and, in a surprising turn, negotiated an additional $50,000 for the rapid turnaround. This created an even more urgent crisis for Chloe's wedding plans, but it also secured my financial future even more firmly. Then, another call from Danny. His voice was hushed, almost conspiratorial. "Aunt Maggie," he whispered. "I just heard Vicky talking. The family. They're planning an intervention. They think you're having some kind of breakdown. They're going to try to get you committed." The morning of the intervention, I dressed carefully. Not in something soft or vulnerable, but in a tailored blazer and a crisp blouse. My hair was neatly styled, my makeup subtle, but intentional. I wanted to present an image of resolute, clear-eyed composure, not a woman on the verge of a breakdown. They thought they were walking into an easy victory, a simple railroading of a confused old woman. They were about to be very, very wrong. When I arrived at Edward's home, the air was thick with a palpable tension. Chloe sat rigidly on the sofa, Vicky hovered nearby, and Edward stood by the fireplace, trying to project authority. On the coffee table, right where I could see them, were blank power of attorney documents. A chill of anger, cold and sharp, went through me. They hadn't even bothered to hide their intentions. Vicky, ever the primary actress, began with a show of manufactured concern. "Maggie," she cooed, her voice sickly sweet. "We're here because we love you. We're worried about you, dear." I met her gaze directly, a small, knowing smile playing on my lips. "Are you?" I asked, my voice flat, challenging her sincerity. Edward stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Mom," he began, attempting a tone of grave seriousness. "We're all concerned about your recent decisions, selling the beach house so suddenly, cutting off contact. It seems impulsive, potentially self-destructive." "Impulsive?" I echoed, my voice rising slightly. "Self-destructive?" I shook my head slowly. "On the contrary, Edward. It makes perfect sense to remove myself from situations where I'm not respected, where my generosity is taken for granted, and where my assets are seen as a personal ATM." Their faces, which had been set in expressions of feigned concern, began to shift. Vicky looked uneasy. Chloe's jaw tightened. Edward's eyes narrowed. "I know about your failed Westridge development, Edward," I continued, my voice steady, cutting through their carefully constructed narrative. "I know about the second mortgage you took out on your own home, and I know about the 3 unauthorized attempts to access my bank accounts." Edward blanched, his face draining of color. Vicky gasped softly. Chloe looked utterly stunned. "You thought you could manipulate me," I accused, my voice gaining strength, instead of simply asking for help. "You thought you could control my life, take my property, and institutionalize me, all because you were in financial trouble." I paused, letting the silence hang heavy in the air. "Let me be clear. I have never been clearer in my life. The house will be sold next week. The proceeds will remain under my control, in accounts you will never have access to." I watched their expressions, a mixture of shock, anger, and dawning realization. "Furthermore," I added, "I have appointments scheduled with my doctor and my attorney to officially document my competency, so any attempts to declare me unfit will be met with swift legal action." Chloe, finally recovering from her shock, burst into tears, her voice high and shrill. "But what about my wedding, Mom? What about my big day?" I looked at her, my heart now completely hardened to her theatrics. "What about my dignity, Chloe?" I asked. "What about my peace of mind? What about the years of being taken for granted?" She stormed out, sobbing dramatically. Edward stared at me, defeated, his shoulders slumping. Vicky, for once, was utterly silent. I stood there for another moment, then calmly walked out, leaving them in their stunned, self-made mess. The beach house closing proceeded smoothly, just as Mr. Sterling had promised. I signed the papers in his office, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. It was the end of an era, a final severance from a place that held so many cherished memories. But it was also the beginning of something new, a future I was finally defining on my own terms. Afterward, Mr. Sterling looked at me kindly. I smiled. I have several plans, Mr. Sterling. And yes, I have plans for where I'll live long term. Very good plans. My next stop was Danny's photography studio. He was surprised to see me. Aunt Maggie? He said. What's up? I handed him a check. It was a generous amount, far more than he expected. For your photography business, Danny, I explained. You're the only one who saw me, who truly cared, during all of this. His eyes welled up, and he tried to protest, but I insisted. His genuine kindness had been a lifeline. As I drove home, my phone exploded with notifications. Edward, Vicky, Chloe. Their messages were a torrent of anger, blame, and accusations. They called me heartless, selfish, cruel. They said I had ruined Chloe's life, destroyed the family. I read a few, then simply muted the conversation. Their words no longer had the power to hurt me. Later that week, I closed on a new condominium in Cambridge. It was open, light-filled, with incredible views of the city. Most importantly, it had exceptional security and was a place where I felt completely safe, completely in control. It was a new beginning, a sanctuary of my own making, far removed from the drama and greed that had defined my life for too long. A week after I moved into my new Cambridge condominium, Edward appeared at my door, unannounced. He had clearly tracked me down. His face was thunderous, a mixture of outrage and disbelief. You're buying property without consulting me? He demanded, his voice thick with accusation, as if I had committed a cardinal sin. I simply raised an eyebrow. I wasn't aware I needed your consultation to choose my own home, Edward, I replied, my voice calm, but firm. I didn't invite him in, letting the closed door act as a clear boundary. He paced on my doorstep, agitated. The family is in crisis, Mom, he lamented, trying to draw me back into his drama. Chloe's wedding is in shambles. This whole situation is completely out of control. He seemed genuinely unable to grasp that I was no longer interested in managing their chaos. The Boston brownstone closes in 3 weeks, I informed him, shifting the conversation to something practical. You and Vicky can go through it before the estate sales. Select anything you want from the furniture. It was a final offering, a chance for them to claim whatever material possessions they still desired before I completely cut ties with the past. A few days later, Danny called, his voice laced with concern. Aunt Maggie, he said. I heard Julian called off the engagement. My heart gave a small pang for Chloe. Despite everything, his parents, Danny continued, were spooked by the family instability. All the drama with the house, Edward's financial issues, they just pulled the plug. So, the consequences of their actions were now hitting Chloe directly. Then Brenda called, reporting a sighting. I saw Chloe at Bloomingdale's today, Maggie, she said, her voice sounding a little sad. She looked broken. She was returning wedding gifts, all by herself. It was a stark image, a public unraveling of the perfect life Chloe had so meticulously constructed. That evening, I found myself looking through old photo albums, images of a younger Chloe, smiling, laughing, full of innocent joy. I saw pictures of Arthur with his arms around her, their faces beaming. When had things changed so drastically? I wondered, a flicker of regret passing through me. Had I done enough? Had I been too soft? Too enabling? Or had I simply misjudged the core of their characters all along? The thought was unsettling. A few days later, Edward called again. His tone was subdued, stripped of its usual bluster. Mom, he said, his voice hesitant. I'm calling to ask you, professionally and personally, to call Chloe. She's in a dangerous place emotionally. She needs you. The urgency in his voice was genuine. For the first time, it sounded like he was truly worried, not just for his own sake. I took a deep breath. Despite everything, Chloe was still Arthur's daughter, my stepdaughter, a part of the family I had loved. I texted her, cautiously. Chloe, I'd like to meet for coffee, if you're open to it. Her reply was swift, laced with her usual bitterness. Why? So you can gloat? But then, a second text followed. Fine. Cafe Nero, tomorrow at 10. She looked awful when I saw her at Cafe Nero. Her eyes were puffy, her hair unwashed, and she wore a faded sweatshirt. The usual designer sheen was gone, replaced by a raw vulnerability I hadn't seen in years. She barely touched her coffee. "Julian's already dating someone else," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "His parents thought our family was too messy. They pulled all their investments from Edward's last venture, too." The full scope of Edward's failure, and its domino effect on Chloe's life, was becoming painfully clear. "You sold the house where we were supposed to get married," Chloe finally blurted out, her voice filled with accusation. "You knew what would happen." I looked at her, my heart heavy. "Did I know your fiancé would abandon you and your family when things got difficult?" "No, Chloe. I didn't know that, but I also didn't know that you would throw away the gift I spent weeks making for you, a gift that held a secret from your father." Her eyes narrowed. "The dolls? They looked cheap, Mom. Everyone else gave me expensive things." The familiar dismissiveness was still there, but it was tinged with genuine hurt. "How did you feel about them, Chloe?" I pressed gently. "Not what everyone else thought, but how did you feel?" She hesitated. "I was embarrassed," she admitted, her voice low, "because everyone else had given me expensive things. I didn't want my friends to see something handmade. This was the opening I had been waiting for." "Did you know," I asked, my voice soft, "that there was a diamond inside one of those knitted dolls? A diamond your father gave me? A symbol of our love? Something I wanted you to have as a quiet legacy from him?" Chloe stared at me, her eyes wide, unblinking. Her face went utterly white. "What?" she whispered, the word barely audible. "A diamond? Inside one of the dolls?" I threw them away, Mom. The dolls. I threw them in the trash that night. I didn't even unwrap them all." The horror on her face was genuine, a true reflection of loss. I felt a pang of profound sadness, not just for the lost diamond, but for the lost connection, the missed opportunity. It was a tangible symbol of things more valuable than we realized, discarded thoughtlessly. But as I watched her, really watched her, I sensed a crack in the wall of mutual resentment, a tiny opening for something new to emerge. The diamond was gone, but perhaps something else, something far more precious, could be salvaged. My new Cambridge condominium truly felt like a fresh start. It was modern, bright, and utterly mine, a testament to my newfound independence. Danny was one of my first visitors, bringing with him a housewarming gift. It was a beautiful, framed photograph of the Cape Cod beach house at sunset, taken from a unique angle that captured its true spirit. "I thought you'd want to remember it as it was," he said, his smile gentle, before all the noise. He looked around my new place, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You seem lighter here, Grandma," he observed, less burdened. I nodded, a genuine smile gracing my lips. "I do, Danny. I feel lighter. Like a tremendous weight has been lifted." My doctor, Dr. Miller, confirmed this feeling at my next checkup. He reviewed my charts, his face breaking into a wide smile. "Maggie, your blood pressure is significantly improved," he declared, his voice full of satisfaction. "Remarkably so. I think your simplified life has done wonders for your health." It was a powerful validation that taking control of my life had been the right, healthy choice. A few weeks later, there was a tentative knock on my door. It was Vicky. She looked nervous, her usual perfect composure replaced by a hesitant vulnerability. "Maggie," she began, her voice soft. "I came to apologize. For everything." She then dropped a bombshell. "Edward and I are separating. The financial issues, the stress of everything. It just became too much." She looked at me, her eyes filled with a new, raw honesty. "The retirement brochures, the power of attorney suggestions, those were mostly my initiatives," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "I thought I was protecting us, protecting Edward. But I was just following a pattern I learned from my own mother, always maneuvering, always trying to control situations." It's not a flattering realization. It was a stark, almost painful admission. But it was a beginning. Edward visited next, looking older, more subdued. He had declared personal bankruptcy, the weight of his failed ventures finally crushing him. But in its place, something unexpected had emerged. "I've taken a position with a nonprofit," he announced, a faint hint of pride in his voice. "Helping inner-city youth with financial literacy. It's surprisingly fulfilling." He was staying with Danny, a clear sign of his diminished circumstances, but also a hopeful indication of a bond strengthening. "I should have just asked for help, Mom," he said, his gaze meeting mine, "instead of everything else. I was too proud, too desperate." "I would have listened, Edward," I replied, a profound sadness in my voice. "I always would have listened." It was a quiet moment of understanding, a shared acknowledgement of past mistakes and missed opportunities. A few days later, I sent Edward a package. Inside were several framed childhood photos of him and Chloe at the beach house, laughing, carefree. Attached was a small handwritten note. "The most valuable assets can't be sold or transferred. They live within us." It was my olive branch, a reminder that some things were more precious than money. Then, a text from Chloe. "Found something I think belongs to you. Can I bring it over tomorrow?" My heart fluttered with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. She arrived the next day, looking healthier, more grounded than she had at Cafe Nero. She carried a small, brown paper bag. "I was cleaning out some old boxes," she explained, her voice soft, "and I found these." She pulled out the knitted dolls, surprisingly intact, though a little dusty. "I actually found the gift tag," she added, handing it to me. It was the one I had written, "To my dearest Chloe, with love, Mom." I took the dolls, my hands trembling slightly. "There's something hidden inside one of them," I told her, my voice gentle. "Something your father wanted you to have." I guided her hand to the doll I had chosen, pointing to a small, nearly imperceptible seam. Chloe carefully unstitched it, her fingers fumbling with anticipation. She pulled out the diamond. It sparkled in the light, catching fire, a silent testament to Arthur's love and my hidden intention. Chloe gasped, her eyes wide. "It's beautiful," she whispered, tears welling up. "I don't deserve this." "You deserve to know you were loved," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "And you deserve to know that true value isn't always visible on the surface." She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. "I'm in therapy now, Mom," she confessed, trying to understand everything. "I miss him. And I miss you. Before all of this." It was the most vulnerable, honest thing she had ever said to me. 1 year later, my new Cambridge condominium buzzed with warmth and laughter. I hosted a small gathering, a testament to the rebuilding of my life. Danny was there, his photography business thriving. Edward, looking genuinely content, chatted quietly with Brenda. Mr. Sterling, ever the picture of quiet competence, shared a glass of wine with Vicky, who looked relaxed and at peace, a new lightness in her eyes. And then there was Chloe, radiant and strong, not with the superficial glow of wealth, but with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced her demons and was slowly, painfully, finding her way back. Danny raised his glass. "To Grandma Maggie," he toasted, his voice clear, "who taught us all that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, to define your own worth, and to build a life based on integrity." Chloe stepped forward, a small, silver chain in her hand. "And," she added, her eyes meeting mine, "that true value isn't always visible on the surface." She opened her palm, revealing a pendant. A simple silver setting holding a familiar, brilliant diamond. "I thought you should wear it now, Mom," she said, her voice soft. "It belongs to you." As I fastened the pendant around my neck, feeling the cool weight of the diamond against my skin, I reflected on my transformation. I had embraced boundaries, faced down greed, and rediscovered my own strength. The old wounds hadn't completely vanished, but in their place, new growth had begun. I was no longer a supporting character in someone else's drama, but the protagonist of my own, finally living a life based on truth rather than obligation. The future stretched before me, open and full of possibility, a testament to the power of reclaiming oneself.